Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Supporting, Measuring, and Implementing Civic Integration webinar. My name is Jessie Stad, and I am with RTI International, and I am the project director of the Enhancing Access for Refugees and New Americans project. And today we are going to explore civic integration, this topic. What is it? Why does it matter? And how is it being supported, measured, and implemented across the country? So we are going to hear from state agency staff, professional developers, practitioners, and students across the country from 3 different states in the district. So first, I'll just say a word about the EARN project. EARN is a national initiative of the Office of Career Technical Adult Education at the U.S. Department of Education. And we aim to provide the adult education field with technical assistance and resources around how do you take IELCE, or Integrated English Literacy and Civics Education activities, along with perhaps your other English language acquisition activities, and think about them with an immigrant integration approach so that we can support learners' linguistic, economic, and civic integration. This is our project's immigrant integration framework, and it shows the way that the legislative requirements of IELCE and IET align with services and activities that further the linguistic, civic, and economic integration of immigrants. So civic integration is what we're going to talk about next, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Blair Wilson-Toso. Thanks, Blair.
Thank you, Jessie. Welcome, everyone. We're delighted to have you all join us, and we're going to talk about civic integration, which, as you know, is a big topic, and it's what we're going to look at here. And while I think that many of you, all of you probably know what it is and why does it matter, we're helping to expand that and also offer some really key resources and thinking on the topic. So next slide, please. So civic integration is not really defined in law, but we're charged through WIOA to support English language learners to acquire the basic and more advanced skills needed to function effectively as parents, workers, and citizens, right? In that last piece, we can really hear the echo of what is civic integration. And through the EARN project, we've defined it broadly to encompass the skills and knowledge needed to engage, navigate, and integrate into one's local community. We've taken this broad perspective because we're not talking about assimilation or that there are key components. We really want people to think about what it means to you, your work, and your adult learners. You can see examples of how we cover this on the slide, as well as in the slide on the EARN Immigrant Integration Framework that Jessie just showed you, which is also accessible on the Links website. So our workshop here today is really going to focus on how states have developed civic standards, what that might look like in this classroom, and then developing student advocacy to support civic integration. So really covering some of those key pieces and a broad thinking, again, about civic integration. Next slide, please. So we'd like to kick this off by hearing from anyone in the audience who is measuring civic readiness or civic knowledge in your program or classroom or state, right? It all flows into these different levels. And when we talk about measurement, we can talk about something formal, such as COAPs or other states' assessments, or we can talk about just how you might assess it within understanding and trying to gauge where your learners are. So if you could pop that into the chat, that would be great. So we just need someone to be brave and kick it off. We know that you all are thinking about it and measuring it in different ways, like how do you assess civic engagement? One of the reasons why we're talking about readiness or civic knowledge in assessment is because how you assess it can also help you define what your key goals are in your classroom. Pre-post survey, okay, citizenship attainment, competency assessment, COAPs, assessments, yes. Ninth, integrating them into course outcomes, Informal assessment of competency, oral skills. Yes, thank you, because that really wraps in on the citizenship exam and understanding those. In Georgia, citizenship skills, possibility, registering to vote, getting a library card. Yes, thank you. That's a really nice layered look at how civic engagement can take place. Industry recognized certificates, right? Civic part of civic engagement is the workplace. A portfolio, nice, Katie. It's really good to hear. All right, you all keep posting it in, because then people can see and maybe learn about what one another is doing in there. The other way is we're going to put a link in the chat that you can click on, which takes you to a Jamboard. And at any point during today's webinar, or even afterwards, we'd love it if you would share any resources that you've used to support the civic integration of ELs, whether that's about how you're doing a portfolio or measuring, but also how are you teaching that and integrating it into your classroom. This resource will continue to be available to those who are on this webinar. So don't be shy sharing your resources that are helpful to you and maybe helpful to your ideas. And then just also any ideas that you've used or example activities are also really welcome. Thanks, Philip. I see your post. That's great. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to our presentation. We've moved through this first part quickly because this is the meat, and we'd like to really be, we'd like to say how grateful we are that people have taken their time to share their expertise with us. I'm going to give brief introductions as there's a lot of content and we really like to hear about their work. So a quick introduction for them is we're delighted to have Carolyn Zachary, State Director of Adult Education, who will talk about their state civic standards and how they measure those and have them implemented in the classroom. Alisa Takeuchi is an ESL instructor and a subject matter expert on civic integration, and will be showing how that is applicable. The co-ops are applicable in a classroom and some resources that she uses. Then we'll move on to Beth Ponder and Anne-Marie Molinari, who lead Texas's adult education professional development work through Train PD at TCAL. And they will talk about the state standards as they're being applied in Texas. And it's very interesting to see how the two different states have defined civic integration. And then we're going to wrap up with Annie Machiel, who is an instructor at BRIA Public Charter School, along with Gabby Salado, who's in charge of student services and student leadership and advocacy, and Zolma Barrera, importantly, an adult learner who can really talk about civic engagement. And she's a student leader at BRIA Public Charter School. So each will be presenting a different aspect of supporting integration through state or local work. And we'd like to say that we'll take questions at the end, but if you have a burning question, put it in the chat and the presenters will either answer them or we'll keep track of them and try and address them at the end of the workshop, of the webinar. Next slide, please. So we're going to move straight over to Carolyn Zachary, Dr. Zachary, who will address the California Co-ops Initiative. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Blair. And if we can go on to the next slide. So hopefully at the end of my very short presentation here, everyone will have an understanding of what our co-ops are, which are our civic objectives and additional assessment plans, and what that system is like in California. And you'll be able to see which co-ops we have that are specifically correlated to immigrant integration indicators. And then I have a plethora of resources at the end of the presentation that Blair said they're going to make sure is available on the Jamboard. So next slide, please. This gives you just a brief history of IELCE in California. And I do want to say that not just IELCE, but the idea of immigrant integration has been a major part of California adult education since the inception of it in 1856. And where we had a lot of Chinese immigrants coming into San Francisco, and the Board of Education put together classes for those individuals to learn English and also vocational skills. So really that beginning of IET model. Next slide. So the whole idea behind our EL Civics and civic participation and IELCE is when we moved into this world of IELCE, we didn't want to get rid of our strong EL Civics programs that we had going. So it was how do we incorporate those together? And really, it gave us an opportunity to refocus on competency-based education, to continue that connection of language instruction to the real world and expand that to the world of work, to specific jobs and careers, and then to utilize this performance-based assessment that we have in California called our COAPs, and then to further that connection for English learners to the workplace through IELCE. Next slide. So our civic participation and IELCE COAP system is really spelled out here. So we have civic objectives, which are general competencies that help our English learners access their community. And within that, we have 60 plus COAPs. A specific COAP always has a number. And so, for example, this COAP 33 is to identify and access employment and training resources to obtain and keep a job. Now, I'm sure that that's something that many of you work with students to have them practice these types of skills that they need in order to get a job and keep a job. So these COAPs are centered around 7 competency areas that you can see listed here. But there's that employment piece, and this is an example of a COAP, and we're going to dig a little deeper into that COAP in just a moment. So next slide. These are some examples of our other COAPs in those 7 areas that were listed there. So accessing community or commercial agencies, that's consumer, economics, health, being able to identify and access free and low cost medical, dental, and healthcare services and insurance. When we're talking about government and law, we're looking at this COAP as an example 45, which really helps our students to understand the legal system, including their rights, laws, and ordinances, and what they need to do in order to obtain legal help. Transition, we always talk a lot about the importance of transition and having our students transition to either post-secondary education, training, or employment. And so this COAP really works on those soft skills, those professional skills, those personal qualities and customer care skills that students need to have. And then another example here for workforce training is COAP 70, where students need to demonstrate the language and literacy skills necessary to effectively participate in workforce training. And in this example, it's very specific for early childhood education. Next slide, please. So as I said, each of the COAPs is focused on an area, and each COAP has 2 tasks per level. Now, they're standardized, so they have to be approved by my office in order for them to be released for anyone to use. We have a lot of our agencies developing COAPs all the time that keep getting added to the plethora of COAPs that we have. So here, this is COAP 33, which we talked about, that had to do with employment and training, resources to obtain and keep a job. So in that COAP, the 2 tasks that the student will have to do is complete a job application and then demonstrate its successful job interview techniques. Next slide. Here is those tasks, just broken down for you to see what they are. So using a level appropriate provider created, so that's the agency, employment history, student will fill out an authentic job application. So they're going to do a job application in class. And when they complete it, and if they put everything in correctly, then they will have successfully met that COAP. And then that task. Then the next task is to role play a job interview. And here are some sample questions at the bottom that the individual who is playing the interviewer might ask the student. And those are given as sample questions so that the student can be thinking and preparing for that practice interview. Next slide. this is what it looks like on our CASA system. If you were to go in and look at this, the co-op, it tells you at the very top what the civic objective number it is. So this is 33. It gives you the objective. It tells you a TOPS Pro and other forms that you don't need to know unless you're using CASAs. And then it tells you what kind of an assessment this is going to be. It's going to be an oral, right? The job interview, the practice, and then there's a written piece of the application. And then it also tells you the range of students that we're looking that can use this co-op. So you're talking about your beginning low to your advanced. So it's all of those students in your English learner classes. And then but specifically, as you look further down on this, you can see where the asterisks are for items that are really specific for those beginning low level students. So that even breaks it down further for the teacher in the classroom on what needs to take place. Next slide, please. This is just a breakdown of what they should be doing to complete that job application, and then how it is assessed, the scoring rubric. Next slide. I just got the 4-minute warning. So, this is going to be, Alicia's going to go into this much more and talk about the needs assessment and how co-ops are selected. So we can skip to the next slide. All of our co-ops include at least, these various language skills. They focus on various task types, and all of that information is included in the co-op. Next slide. They are aligned to our college and career readiness standards, as well as the English language proficiency standards. Next slide. In California, we have 7 focus areas for immigrant integration. And these are those areas, and in these areas, we collect data on how students do on the co-ops that we report to our legislature. So the next slide gives an example of this with our pretend school and pretend students. And this just shows you what the co-ops are. So if you look at this, you see the student name, and then the next column is the name of the co-op that they're working on, the number, and then specifically what they're going to be doing within that, or the subject area that they're working on, and then the co-op and what that co-op is. The next slide will show you what the school scores look like. And so if you had this score, if this is our report that we're turning in, that they're turning into us, that we're collating everything together and rolling up to the state. But if I were looking at this as an administrator, I'd say, oh, we have some areas we need to work on with our students, and maybe go back and review. Anything that I would say is below 70 or 75 is something we should look at again. Next slide. These are all just so many resources that we have for you to look at the co-ops, to look at civic participation in IELCE, and you can find these on the CASAS website, which is going to be on one of the Jamboard slides. The next slide. And here's another, this is where you would find the co-ops on the CASAS website. So again, that link will be in the Jamboard. Next slide. This is the last slide. So not only do we have all of this happening with our co-ops, but we are also developing EL Civics Exchange, where there are lessons that are put in these areas that anyone can use. And you can find that on our OTAN website, and we encourage you to look at those. They have to be free resources, they have to be open source, and also they have to be 508 compliant. So a lot of rules to get posted on the EL Civics Exchange, but this is brand new, not brand new, a year or two old, but we're working on curating more information, more resources to be put here. So I think that's it. The next slide has my email. I know I went over a lot of information quickly, but the next presenter, she's going to dive deeper into the co-ops. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. We can just go ahead and move right through the next two. We're just going to go, I'm just going to hand it right over to Elisa, and she is going to walk us through what Carolyn talked about and what it looks like in place. Thank you, Elisa.
Thanks. Thank you, Blair. Thanks, Dr. Zachary. So I am just going to piggyback on what Dr. Zachary was talking about as far as how our agency works and develops our co-op schedule. So my name is Elisa Takeuchi, and I'm an ESL instructor at Garden Grove Adult Education in sunny Southern California. And I also work for the Sacramento County Office of Education. I am a content developer for the USA Learns course, Access America, which we'll talk a little bit about in a couple of slides. And I am a helper of technology integration throughout the state. Next slide, please. So how does our agency develop which civic objectives we're going to be doing for each year? So each agency is required to create a needs assessment. So every spring for us, we develop on a Google form a needs assessment, and we disperse it out to our students, because our students are the ones who direct us in which civic objectives we'll be doing for each year. And so we give out a Google form, and the students decide if they're interested in this topic, not interested in this topic, or somewhat interested in this topic. And we allow them, when we aggregate all the information, and then the teachers, we get together, the ESL teachers get together at the end of the year, and we discuss which ones were selected as the top 3 or 4 choices. And then we go through through the CASAS website, the rubrics of those particular civic objectives, and then we choose which co-op, which tasks the students will actually perform for the next school year. Next slide, please. So this is just an example of what our Google form looks like. As you can see on the left, we have our Google form, and it's translated into English, Vietnamese, and Spanish. Those are our 3 primary languages at our school. If a student needs help in any other language, we do have some Koreans and some Chinese, then we can also get that translated for them through Google Translate. And then the students again select the different civic objectives on how they choose, whether this is for them. How would they like to learn for the next school year? And then we have the results on the right-hand side, and we can see how many selected each co-op. And so we can go through now, and we decide as a group, we go through all the different tasks, and we decide which ones will we do and when will we do them, because we've kind of trial and errored this throughout the years, and we have learned the hard way that some particular types of tasks don't do very well in the fall, and they're much more the students are much more successful in the spring, and so we'll push those particular co-ops farther down. And then some of the other co-ops, we find that the students are actually they're very well equipped to learn and pass the co-ops at the beginning of the year, especially if we're choosing diversity or things of that nature, because it's more about getting to know students and personal information, things that we're already teaching at the beginning of a school year anyways. Next slide. So how does Access America tie in with this? Well, I was really lucky, and I was able to work with RTI in developing a teacher's guide, or not even just a teacher's guide, a guide to help with program administrators and teachers alike to use more digital literacy within their curriculum as supplemental material to work together with the EL Civics civic objectives. And because I was working with the Sacramento County Office of Education, I was there to help develop the course itself. And the unique thing about this is that we had immigrant integration in mind from the get-go. The lessons, the scenarios, the vocabulary words, everything was developed with this in mind. And it was very strategic in how we were going to develop and plan this whole course. Now, even though the course is NRS leveled at intermediate ESL, I am still able to use a lot of it with my beginning students as a whole class instruction. I will project something up on the board, and we will do it as a class. And then maybe if we're on our Chromebooks, and they can go ahead and redo the lessons on their own. as a whole class, and then we can check things together. So Access America has been a really great resource for immigrant integration and really helping our students, especially students that are very new to the country, to acclimate into their new communities. Next slide. So here again, we were talking about the guide, and if you, when you are looking through this guide, you'll see that there are going to be a lot of examples coming from my classroom or my perspective on how we use Access America in conjunction with our textbooks, with our EL Civics, so that it's a very seamless transition. And so our students are able to really gain information free of charge on a website at their leisure that's also device friendly. Next slide. So as I am planning for my lessons, for my classroom, like I said, we meet at the end of the year to discuss which civic objectives we'll be doing for the next school year. And so for this particular example, I chose 46, which is health, nutrition. And so we went through and we decided which actual co-op, which tasks we're actually going to be doing with our students. And this one happened to be 46.4, which is a portfolio. So it's about 4 different smaller tasks, and then a reflection, and also some feedback. And so the students, what I do is I kind of do the backwards design, is where I look at the tasks. What is being asked of our students? What is it that they need to gain? What are the learning objectives? And then I take my 2 textbooks and I find the units that are correlating with that. And I start to make my lesson plan. And then, because I'm going to also integrate Access America, I go into the Access America teacher resources page, and I go to the scope and sequence, and then I can easily find the units that are going to tie in and correlate with those particular EL Civics. So next slide, please. So this is just a snippet of what one of my lesson plans could look like just for day 1. So I use the WPIA lesson format, and I start with a warm up, and I'm getting the students kind of introduced into the topic with maybe some familiar information and vocabulary words. I'm stating their objectives, and I'm taking straight from the EL Civics co-op and also through my textbooks. And then I'm actually introducing them to Access America. Again, because I have beginning ESL students, I'm doing it as a whole class. I'm not just letting them go and trying it on their own, because it would be a little bit too difficult, but we can do it repetitively over and over in my classroom. And then I can actually allow them to go into the website on their own, and they can practice independently. And then I list all the different practices that are available for them. So this is how Garden Grove, and me specifically, this is how we go through and decide which civic objectives and then which co-ops we're going to be doing for each school year. Next. Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa. We have a question that we have a moment to respond to. So Robert was curious, what are some examples of co-ops tasks that are easier or more difficult in your opinion?
Oh, that's a great question. So for us, the challenges that we face are trying to do, especially this is for the higher levels. So intermediate, high, advanced, when they're asked to do essays, either a 3-paragraph essay or a 5-paragraph essay, we have learned the very, very hard way not to do that in the fall, because we have learned that the students just aren't ready for that yet. And the teachers just don't have enough time to teach them, introduce them how to do them, especially the students that are being promoted maybe from intermediate low. They haven't been introduced to that, you know, they might be doing 1 paragraphs at that point. And so we've kind of learned that way. Oral presentations tend to be very, very popular, but they're very time consuming. And so again, they can work in the fall, but we have to make sure that we have enough staff. And then if we try to do it in the spring, what we tend to find is that after winter break, we have a lot of students who go back to their native country and they haven't returned back yet. And so the students haven't returned. And so they're not able to do or complete the tasks. And so again, it's very much just over the course of the years, how we evaluate, decide our calendar, and knowing our population of students of which ones are going to be most applicable for our students that are actually coming to school at that particular time. And then portfolios are very time consuming, but they tend to be a little bit on the easier side, but the teacher and the students must be a little bit more organized because there's so many tasks involved. That you have to keep them all together, because we know with open enrollment, sometimes, one day the student is there and the next day they're not, and so forth and so forth, and trying to decide, do you have this task number 1? Do you have task number 3? And trying to get the students organized in that manner. So those are just some of the challenges that we have faced over the years about which kind of co-ops and when to administer them. That was a great question. Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, that was a really interesting answer too. Thank you, about all the different pieces, that it's not just about what literacy level, right, that you want to do, but how it fits into your schedule. Just a couple of updates before I turn it over to hear from Beth and Anne Marie is that if you want the PowerPoint, just email earn@rtia.org. Jamie posted that into the chat. And I also see, Nanette, you posted a great resource. If you could also put that into the Jamboard, we'd really appreciate it. And if you continue to post your questions for the presenters, even if it's if you wanted to post a question for Dr. Zachary, please feel free. We're watching the chat and we'll make sure it gets directed to the right person. And now it's my pleasure to move over to the Texas Adult Education and Literacy Civics Content Standards. We have Beth Ponder and Anne Marie Molinari Sanders here, who will take us through their process of developing and what they look like and why they might have decided they needed some standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Blair. We appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. My name is Beth Ponder, and I am the Director of Professional Development for the Train PD at TCAL project at Texas A&M University, and we serve as the Professional Development Center for AEL for the state of Texas. And introduce my colleague, Anne Marie Molinari Sanders.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anne Marie Molinari Sanders, and I am the Manager of Disability Services, as well as a professional development specialist at Train PD at TCAL, and I work with Beth at Texas A&M University, and we're excited to be with you today.
Thank you. So if we could go ahead to the next slide, and we're going to just jump in to talk about Texas Content Standards 3.0. So Texas rolled out our original AEL content standards in 2016, which included the academic standards of English language arts, mathematics, and English as a second language. And a few years later, we developed version 2.0, which aligned those academic standards to industry clusters and detailed work activities. Then in 2020, a request was made to use some of our state leadership funds to develop a standards 3.0. And this was approved by our state commission, and we began development on parent family standards and then citizen community or civic standards. And that's what we want to talk about today. For civics specifically, we saw the need to have standards that would ensure we were aligned with the federal goals for the integrated English literacy and civics education funding under WIOA. Specifically, the expanded program objectives and vision for integrated services across the titles, and supporting that transition to post-secondary education, training, or employment. And strengthening, accelerating program services for ELLs informed the need for more structure to support curriculum development and increase the rigor of instruction statewide. Next slide, please. Sure we can see. Yes. So Blair asked us to speak to why we chose these topics and the approach we did for our standards and how we formalized it. First, we formalized it by developing that set of standards and then releasing state policy that required the use of the standards. So in Texas, that means we publish a guide. We have a performance guide, a testing guide, or an AEL letter. And then we provide professional development and technical assistance across the state. And the PD, for the most part, is us at TCAL, the TWC state office staff deal with any technical assistance around policy. And you can see the AEL letters that are referenced on the slide. So this guidance that we set out published two major requirements and put two major requirements in place. All ESL services and curricula had to include a civics component, and that it needed to be aligned to the Texas Content Standards 3.0. And then the second was that all coursework, including the coursework for ESL, required a syllabus to be in place that reflected the content standards to address in that course sequence. Now, the goal was for a program to clearly lay out the progression of services for learners to reach successful outcomes. So how did we get there? What informed the civics standards? The inspiration came from the National Institute for Literacy Equip for the Future Content Standards project. And if you've been around as long as me, you remember Equip for the Future and NIFL. The EFF content standards were developed over like a 6-year period of time by hundreds of adult education practitioners and experts nationwide. Now, 2 of the original EFF role maps identified the knowledge and skills adults utilize to function as responsive parents and family members, hence our parent-family content standard, and actively participate as responsible citizens and community members, which leads us to our civic standard. So those role maps were the basis of these standards. And so now I want to go ahead and turn it over to Anne Marie and have her kind of delve into what the standards look like and what their structure is. So Anne Marie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Beth. So the citizen community member content standards is content area 5 in our Texas Adult Education and Literacy, AEL, content standards book. And these civic standards focuses on and encourages personal growth and responsibility as a United States citizen, but it also focuses on participating in community events, activism, connection and collaboration in a community, and also education and growth in a community so that a whole community ecosystem is sustained. And this is why we are so excited in Texas about these content standards and the teachers using the content standards in the classroom. And I know that we did drop the link to the digital copy of the content standards in the chat pod if you want to pull them up and follow along with me. All right, next slide. All right, so the organization of the civics content standards follows the rest of our content standards book. And so the content standards follow a content area. So there's a content area, and then each content area, in this case, civics, has sub-area standards that also have its own sub-area standards, and then those sub-area standards have their own benchmarks. So again, you've got your sub-areas, which are broad. Then you have your sub-area standards underneath each sub-area, and then those sub-area standards have their own benchmarks attached to them. Next slide. So the first thing I want to share, we wanted to talk about, was to show you this content area definition. So for civics, we have this definition, which I will read for you, which is effective citizens and community members take informed action to make a positive difference in their lives, the communities, and the world. And you can see that I pulled out and bolded some words here: informed action, positive difference, and the world. And this is really important because you're going to see these words and phrases repeated in the sub areas that we're gonna touch on next. So next slide. Now, the civics content standards have 4 broad sub areas. So in sub area 1, we have sub area 1, become and stay informed. And citizens and community members find and use information to identify and solve problems and contribute to the community. That's sub area 1. And under sub area 1, there's going to be sub area standards as well as benchmarks. Sub area 2, form and express opinions and ideas. Citizens and community members develop a personal voice and use it individually and as a group. Next slide. So then we have sub areas 3 and 4, and you're going to see that the standards are building in these sub areas. So sub area 3, work together. Citizens and community members interact with other people to get things done toward a common purpose. They're working together, they're coming together. In sub area 4, take action to strengthen communities. Here, citizens and community members exercise their rights and responsibilities as individuals and as members of groups to improve the world around them. And again, each of the sub areas have sub area standards, and then those sub area standards have benchmarks. Next slide. And then to wrap up our discussion of the standards, the civic standards, I wanted to share with you an actual page in the book, page 125. And this shows you a bird's eye view of everything together. So you have sub area 1, become and stay informed. And then you can see that there's 3 sub area standards here. And then there are the benchmarks attached to each one of these sub area standards, and they are numbered on this page. So at this time, I'm gonna pass the mic back to Beth.
All right, thank you. If we could go ahead and go to the next slide. We just wanted to touch really quickly on our approach to rolling out content statewide. So Train PD at TCAL, we have a rigorous approach to roll this content out, including what we did with the civics content standards. We began with development of a pilot training, followed by edits and content changes based on feedback. And then we do a training of trainer event. And then that cadre of trainers is available to do regional trainings or training for individual programs. And then last slide, please. We just wanted to let you know that we are not done. Content standards are ever evolving, and we're actually currently working on digital literacy standards that will be incorporated in our standards version 4. So stay tuned, more information to come about digital literacy standards. So thank you very much. We appreciate your attention.
Thanks, Bethany. I really appreciate you walking us through another look at how civic standards can be incorporated into the state ideas of curriculum and ensuring that it gets integrated into the English language classroom. So now we're going to turn it over to to 3 people. Can we go to the next slide, please? We're going to hand it over to Gabby, Annie, and Zulma, who are going to reflect exactly what Beth and Emery were talking about. They talked about voice, engagement, and making positive change. And this is what we're delighted that Brea Public Charter School is going to give us some information about the program that they run, which is really about talking about their advocacy and engagement work with students and leadership efforts, and then how it is supported as well by work in the classroom. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the, is it Annie who's going to take lead first?
Yes, start us off. Thank you so much, Blair. And thank you to all the presenters. It's been really interesting to hear across the country all of the work being done with civics. So I'll go ahead and get started if you want to go to the next slide. So my name is Annie McKeel, and I am an adult education instructor at Brea Public Charter School, and I teach the advanced level classes of English at our school. So today we'll go over a brief overview of what our school is, and how we develop advocacy skills in class a little bit, but mostly about how we extend our advocacy skills beyond our classroom. Next slide, please. So Brea is kind of a unique model. We are a 2-generation model with all of our students being parents. So the adult education section of this, the green, all of our students are parents. Some of the parents have children who go to school at Brea as well, if they are infants through pre-K. So in the same hallway, you'll walk down and you'll see adult education classes on one side and early childhood on the other side. And this provides us with an opportunity to really serve immigrant families. And because of that, it gives us a unique opportunity related to advocacy, because all of our students as parents want to advocate for their families and advocate for their children. So that is what we are working to do. Next slide. So as a school in general, we do many different things to integrate civics throughout our curriculum and throughout activities we do in school, like visiting the library. We have our own student school council, but I'll just touch on two things we do in our advanced level classes that help to connect students with leadership opportunities and ways to advocate for themselves. So one of those is in our advanced classes, we read a different novel each year. This past year, we read The Other West Moor. And throughout that, there's a theme related to housing rights and various other topics. But when we talked about housing rights, we had the opportunity to bring in an organization that touches on that in DC, who could talk about what students could do if something happened with their housing and kind of relate it with the book and the curriculum, but also to students' real lives and how they can advocate for their families. Next slide, please. We also follow a curriculum called One World Education that is located in, based in DC, and they work with middle school, high school, and adult students. And through this curriculum, each student chooses a topic of interest to them, an issue in their community, an issue in the world that they've seen. They research that topic deeply. They look at what are problems, or what are the causes of the problems, what are some solutions, and then they write a 5-paragraph argumentative essay about that. So they're developing research skills, writing skills, critical thinking skills, and through that argumentative essay, they're trying to persuade change and make change. And then they can have the opportunity to share that. We talk about sharing it by sending a letter to your city council member or various ways that they can actually advocate that in class. Next slide, please. And that process that we do through the One World curriculum is very similar to a way that students can extend their learning outside of class. We have a group of students who formed BRIA Voices for All. And in that organization, students have the opportunity to really extend what they learn in the classroom, all of the technology skills, all of the employability skills, all of the speaking and writing skills, and use it to advocate for something important to them with a community of other immigrant learners. Next slide, please. So here is a picture of 2 students who were in BRIA Voices for All, one of whom we'll hear from today. And in this, they are presenting to a hearing and practicing those skills that they've done in class, the speaking skills and writing skills and organizing a speech and using it to advocate for something important to our community. And I will hand it over to Gabby. Next slide, please, who will tell us more about BRIA Voices for All.
Thank you, Annie. So my name is Gabby Salado. A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Mexico, so English is very much my second language. And I started at BRIA as a student who then started BRIA Voices for All, being part of BRIA Voices for All. Now I'm the facilitator for our advocacy group, and I'm also student services and leadership coordinator for one of our sites. So next slide, please. What like Annie mentioned, advocacy really starts in the classroom, starts learning about like, what can you do? Where can you go? Who is in charge? Where do you make the difference? Do you really believe in it to invest your time in it? And they start practicing, they start doing the research, and then all advanced students, they have the option to join BRIA Voices for All. And in BRIA Voices for All, we just take it to the next level and doing it in real life. So next slide, please. So advocating in real life, it takes different forms. It can be from creating a tweet storm because the pandemic shut everyone down, but the issues were still there. And tweeting and sharing your story, or testifying before the city council, before the mayor, before the deputy mayor, or the chairman, just to make sure that they see our faces and they hear our story. And when things need to change in our community, is best when it comes from those who are being affected. So this is a couple of 2 of our students who were very much active in advocating. So next slide, please. Another way that we advocate is when something is not right in your community, because since we do serve adults and learning English as their second language, it's more than just learning the language, is integrating themselves into the community. And that goes in visiting your clinics and being part of different spaces in the city that will help your children get to know their neighborhood. And I think the best way is to share your story. What's happening? I came from this country. This is how long I've been in the US. These are my fears. This is what I see that is not correct, and I would like to change, but I don't just want it to change. I want to do something to partake in this change. We met because of the pandemic. We were meeting over Zoom with the ward representative, which became great allies when we were advocating at a larger scale. And it was great to have their support in this change. So this is just ways that our students, and me included while I was a student, who really felt like something was about to change because we were doing the work. So next slide, please. So the way that how we organize BRIA Voices for All, so anybody in the advanced classes at BRIA can join BRIA Voices for All. They have the option on Friday to join their English class, child development, and then after either English class or BRIA Voices for All to implement like writing skills, speaking skills, and also advocating and organizing skills. And we meet we meet every single Friday, once in person, 3 times over Zoom. And the way that it started from the organizer before I took this position was part of another organization that is called PAVE, and they're very much involved in parents advocating for their kids' education. And a few of our students were also part of PAVE. So they came together and they had this great idea of like, hey, can we bring those advocating skills into the classroom? And this is how BRIA Voices for All got started. So next slide, please. When we advocate and when we organize, we have to do it in a way that is organized. So we follow the wheel of organize, and in part of this advocacy wheel, we have this great tool that is, we use what we have to get what we need to get what we want. And this goes in, like, we were advocating for more money for our charter schools this past year. So what do we have? We have people, we have our experiences, we love our teachers, we're learning a lot. We are prime examples that investing in education is paying off. So that's what we have. Okay, what do we need? We need to get organized. We need to talk to more people. We need to build more connections. We need to learn about the K through 12 and what's the difference between K through 12 in charter schools for children and for adults. Like getting that knowledge to get what we want. What do we want? We wanted 100% of the per pupil funding for our schools. And these are ways that right now it seems like a lot of information, but we do learn it. Fridays for about an hour, they have questions. Of course, there's always that fear of like, if I say something, this is not my country, I might not be here legally, I don't want to get in trouble. And this is where the greatness of DC comes, because DC is a sanctuary city. So they are very much involved in the immigrant community and how they want to see them thrive, and they want to see them get better jobs, and they want to see our immigrant community get involved, so it feels like it is their community too, and my community and my child's community, because this is where we are living. This is where our children go to school and where we pay our taxes when we work. So this is like a way to just do it. It's just I can get passionate about this. So next slide. Can I have next slide, please? Oh, back. And I think there was one slide before this one, unless my computer is slow. Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. So these, I love this photo because this day was like a really bad storm, and we had an in-person meeting, and I was like, okay, I'm not expecting like a big group to come because most people just want to be home. They don't want to get their children out, but I was really surprised to see like a group of the student leaders show up and be like, no, we're here. We're invested in what we're organizing for. And we might not be able to bring our children today, but we are here because we want to know what the next step for our advocating cycle is. So next slide, please. So in that involvement in trying to get more funding for our schools, we participated in budget forums that the city holds, that the mayor holds in the city. They're free events that if you don't really do your research, you won't know that it's happening. So because we were participating in these events throughout the fiscal year's budget, the DC Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs highlighted our table because they were excited to see that fellow immigrants were showing up and wanting to learn about what the fiscal year was going to bring and what the budget was looking like. So it was encouraging to see our students see themselves in social media and say, oh, wow, like this is great. I was a little nervous. I was a little scared. I didn't know they were going to talk to me. I am great to learn that our city is really spending money on our schools. And it was just like a great feeling to see that their faces got lit up when they were like, hey, yeah, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're learning about where the money is going to go to and where the money went last year. So this is a great event. So next slide, please. This is another way the charter school board organized a rally in our efforts to try to get more funding for our schools, and they invited us to participate. And it was so great to see those parents show up with their kids, me included. I took my daughter out of school for this, well, half of the day, because my daughter goes to a charter school as well. And I wanted her to see that if she really wanted to see change, it's not just talking it, but living it and going there and talking about it and spending time investing and wanting to see change in your community. So I think it was a great teaching moment for my child, but it was also a great experience for our students to see that change can happen if you stay consistent in what you want to see change. So next slide, please. I'm going to hand it over to Zulma. Zulma is a great parent leader. She's one of those people that has been living in DC for a while, and she knows what's happening and she wants to know more. And she's very passionate about getting people involved into their community. So Zulma.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Zulma Barrera. And first, I want to say I'm lucky to be at BRIA. First, as a student, they empower me and, in many ways, being parents and learn my English skills. And also now I'm proud to be part of BRIA Voices for All, that they give me that opportunity to be a leader in my community. So I'm very glad of that. Something that Gabby mentioned a lot of stuff, but that is a really true things that as immigrants, we feel a little bit nervous, and we feel, that we can make mistakes for the language. And that is something that BRIA help us to write testimonies and practice before I speak in front of the council's members. So I feel that we really be prepared. And sometimes also, as Gabby mentioned, here in Washington, D.C., we are a sanctuary city. Sometimes we invite them, if they want to speak in their own language, they can speak, and then we translate it, or they translated what they say, so they feel free to talk and in their own language too. I feel that advocacy, that people really need to know what they are doing. And it's a pleasure to be at BRIA, because it's not only, this last year we was advocate for charter school, but it's not only, to take care of because, oh, we are a charter school, we advocate for that. No, during the pandemic, we advocate, for immigrants family, that they can have a some money to help them because, as you know, a lot of the government doesn't send them money if they don't have a social security. So we advocate here in the district for them in that emergency. So we was advocate that year. We was planning to advocate for health insurance that year, but we stopped advocate for health insurance and we moved to advocate for immigrants families at the moment because we see that we saw the very problems in our community. So I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad that Bria teach me the way how to advocate, and that's what our program is. I don't know if you have any questions to me too. I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you. If you can forward to the next slide. So thank you very much. I know that we are short on time. I appreciate everybody hanging in there. I posted some resources that we've developed, and they're in the chat. They're also on the Jamboard, which I suggest that you go in and look at. It's been delightful to see the activity. But really what I'd like to take the time to do is thank all of our presenters. We know that there are many, many more questions. If you email us at earn@rti.org, we will get you the slides, and you can also contact the presenters directly. They all said that we could give their email to you and that you were welcome to contact them. And the next slide, please, is just to if you would like to also join us, you can register for the next webinar, which is next week, which is all about supporting linguistic integration through multilingual approaches, which will be at 3 o'clock next week. And if there are any questions, pop them in and we'll hang out for a few minutes, and feel free to answer any questions that come up.